Hi, Stephen. Thanks again for catching up with me today for another quick video. Today we're talking about a kind of a second part to alarm handling, I suppose, which is all around CCTV and video verification. But before we get into it, could you please give a quick introduction to yourself and to Southern and Northern Monitoring?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Hi. So my name's Stephen Lord. I'm the General Manager of Southern and Northern Monitoring. I've been with the business for just over 2 years and in the industry for around 8.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, we recently spoke about alarm handling, which is obviously a massive part of what security monitoring is, especially in the professional capacity. A key part of that's really a part of a growing industry as well, I think, or a key part of our industry is CCTV and CCTV monitoring. To give a bit of background to our viewers, could you sort of provide the foundation knowledge on what is CCTV monitoring first and foremost, and actually, how does it work?
Yeah, sure. So it's fundamentally different from intruder or fire monitoring, because typically when we get an intruder or a fire alarm, we know what it is. There's a tag on the alarm when it comes through to us that says there's a fire alarm in zone 4, or there's an intruder alarm on sensor 8, that kind of thing. So we know where we started. Whereas with a CCTV alarm, when it comes in, all we're really getting is a clip saying there's been some movement here. And that is effectively emailed across to us via the on-site video system. We get that, and then it's up to us to action it. So we don't know what we're getting when we get it. And that's what makes it fundamentally more difficult to manage than intruder or fire.
Okay, and is this something that you see as more of a residential or a business function, or actually is it good for both?
It's good for both. We see more on business because often the price tends to make it not ideal in a residential circumstance. But what we have seen recently is people moving away from maybe full-on CCTV to using visual verification linked to an intruder panel, and that's much more cost-effective and fits better into the residential market. But in terms of the alarms that we get, we get them from residential and business equally.
And if I was, again, a residential or a business customer, and I was to say to a security installer or someone like yourself, I'm sure you've heard it lots of times, can't I just monitor my CCTV on my smartphone? Because obviously this is a massively widely adopted function now. What would you say the key differences are?
Yeah, I think the key difference is typically when you're getting a notification to your phone, firstly, it's crowded out by all of the notifications and messages coming through, and notifications have gone crazy on phones over the last few years. But also what you don't get when you're trying to do it yourself is that escalation path and what to do about it. So if we've got a URN, for example, we can call the police out when we're seeing things happening, we can call key holders out, and even on the most basic of visual verification systems, we can we can use the linked intruder alarm and look at the cameras at the time that an alarm comes through to see what's going on, build up a picture, and we could use that as a confirmation signal on one of the more basic systems. So really what you're getting for your money is the expertise and the escalation path that you can't provide yourself.
And is CCTV monitoring or video verification also used in the same way as the technology behind alarm monitoring, when we talked about false alarms, which is a pretty common thing for any security system, whether it's residential or business? Does CCTV monitoring and video verification work in a similar way in that respect as well?
A similar principle in that we have to take the alarm, triage them, act on them. But the extra element that you get with CCTV is CCTV generates far more false alarms than an intruder or fire system ever would. And that's really because cameras on site and NVRs, they're trained to detect, or they're programmed to detect movement. And often they're not much more sophisticated than that. So something like clouds skimming across the sky, or a bush waving around, or a flagpole, something like that, all triggers movement. And often what we find is that each individual little clip of movement can be sent through to us for analysis. And what we don't want is every single one of those going to our operators and tying up their time, particularly on a day when you get get a windy day, you get bushes blown around, you get rubbish flying around, that kind of thing. All sorts of things like that can trigger CCTV alarms.
But obviously the operators are still there to respond when a clip does make it through, I suppose you call it a filtration or advanced system. That is the technology piece, basically.
Exactly. So what we want to do is make sure that where analysis can be done before it goes to an operator, that's the way that we can add some value here. So probably for about the last 18 months or so, we've been working with our analytics partner, and each clip that comes in gets sent across to them for analysis in a really quick process. And then if there's some genuine movement seen, a sort of moving person or a moving vehicle, there's a green box put around it. It's presented to the operator with basically, look here, this is where something's happening. And that's really useful, because if you're an operator who's been doing that for hours on end, looking at a lot of images, you need that helping hand sometimes to show you. And particularly camera images aren't always good, lighting isn't always good. So if you're looking at a dark moving figure in dark clothing in a dark environment, it's really hard to see. So that green box can be all of the help they need sometimes to see what's going on. And then the flip side of that is, if it is a pigeon or a bush or something that we really don't need to be alerting anybody to, then the system will automatically flag that as unverified. It's not movement you need to see, and will park it and not present it to an operator. So as you say, it's a filtration system, it's an analysis system to make sure that as much as possible, the operators are overseeing what they need to see and can actually do something about it.
And I'm guessing, just like alarm monitoring, it just speeds up that process of confirmation and indeed response if it requires a response.
Exactly. What we don't want is the operator's time tied up looking at another moving tree, that kind of thing, because that could be the time at which there's a fire alarm coming through, or a panic alarm, or a genuine robbery happening, or something like that. So it's all about protecting the capacity of the operators, but at the same time making sure that we use that capacity to generate quicker responses, and the machine can handle the things that don't need to be seen by a person, because there's no way a person can ever add any value on those clips.
That makes total sense. And if I was a security installer, and I did want, had clients that wanted to connect both alarms and CCTV systems to 24/7 professional monitoring, would you say it's more of a recommendation to have both, or actually a requirement to have both?
It's a good question. So I think in terms of, I would always describe it as you need tailored protection based on what the issues that you're trying to protect against at your site. In a relatively low risk residential area, you might be sufficient having an intruder alarm with visual verification. You might not need full on CCTV coverage, but we do see a lot of sites out there where they might have 10, 15, 20 cameras covering a big site. And the more open the area is, the less suitable it is to link it to an intruder system. So really, it should be tailored according to the particular site's circumstances. But from an installer's perspective, we look after so much that we've seen all the combinations of it. So we're well suited to help and to advise on how to set these things up, where to put schedules onto the account so that we're not seeing alarms during certain times of the day when there's staff on site, for example. So because we've got such a wealth of experience, we're well placed to advise on those individual situations.
Excellent. That's good to know. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks so much.